Now, the main reason that I find this terrifying as a person who doesn't live in Brazil is the fact that it can happen. And if it happens to X, it can happen to other platforms. And if it happened in Brazil, it can happen elsewhere. And that is concerning because free speech is the only way that politicians can be held somewhat accountable for what they do. I mean, politicians are granted enormous amount of power. A bad government can completely destroy the lifestyle of their citizens. It can downgrade the living conditions and the living qualities of their citizens. They can be tyrannical and do a lot of abuses. And one of the only way that the government can be held accountable is with free speech. There's no other way. This is why tyrannical governments, the first thing they do is they censor the press and then replace it with their own press. A lot of anti-fascists and so-called liberals, they point out that one of the greatest evils that the Nazis did was to burn books and to ban authors. And they pretend that fascism is about burning books and banning authors, but they forget that they also replace those books with their own books. They replace those authors with their own authors. So it's not like fascist governments are illiterate. They provide their own literacy. It's just that their own literacy only promotes the lack of accountability for the politicians and instead glorifies the politicians. They glorify the people that are in charge, pretending that some of the things that they did wasn't done by them, or shifting the blame so that the same people can be elected over and over again and maintain power. Now, the culture around it is very concerning because for those of you who don't remember, just like the Trump assassination attempt is being memory holed, the fact that the internet used to be completely uncensored before 2016 is also being memory holed. And before 2016, the internet was treated like the phone company. If someone committed a crime on the internet, if they were trying to scam someone or they were posting illegal material, that person was responsible. And the government was required to find out who that person is and then arrest them. So if you committed a crime, it was the same like committing a crime over the phone, like trying to call someone and scam them or blackmail them, right? Like the phone company wasn't responsible for the type of conversation that were happening over the phone, and it wasn't required to monitor the conversation of law-abiding citizens without any court order, without any reasonable doubt, simply because they may commit a crime, simply because they may say something that's illegal. And if the phone company doesn't do that, then the phone company is liable. I mean, that type of shit would only happen in the Soviet Union. That type of shit would happen in Benito Mussolini's Italy or Nazi Germany, right? Like this type of thinking where everyone has to be listened in on, where everything you say has to be filtered by the government. That type of stuff would happen in China. And I remember where people were looking at China and they were saying, wow, what a bad place to live. It sounds like a dystopia. What, they have a great firewall? Like they're not allowing Western apps simply because they're from the West? Like they're afraid that their own people can talk with each other? That's absolutely ridiculous. And I remember journalists and I remember academics and many people were laughing at the Chinese system and they were calling it backwards. Like that's not the way forward. The way forward is to encourage more communication, is to encourage people to talk with each other, is to have referendums. Do you guys remember those? We used to have them in the European Union all the time. Many countries before joining the EU would have referendums on important issues every now and then. I don't remember the last referendum here. Or any referendum that the EU does. They almost as if they don't care what the people think because they know they can use social media that they control to manipulate what people think. By pushing correct algorithms, by banning influential people, by censoring political opinions. So yeah, like before 2016, none of that happened in the West. None of that happened in the EU. None of that happened in the United States. The internet was allowed to be free. Now certain platforms would moderate according to what they thought was required. Certain platforms would ban spam. They would ban illegal material. If they found something illegal, they would report to the cops out of their own volition. It's how the internet was. And most people of my age at the time, we were told that the internet, you know, it's a useful tool, but it's also a bad place. So internet anonymity is very important. Do not give away your real name, do not give away your address, do not give away any personal information, because you don't know who's listening on the other end of the line. Someone may scam you. Do not click links from strangers. Do not meet up with people that you've met on the internet, because they may be crazy people. And this is what was told not just to me, but to all my friends, to everyone that I know. There were TV shows surrounding this topic. There were movies surrounding this topic with a person that was too gullible and they met someone online and they ended up being a psycho. I remember seeing like a B-rated movie like that. There were talk shows about it, right? Like everyone knew that on the internet, you gotta keep yourself safe. Now, the internet, in my opinion, is just as dangerous. Like there are all these shows that are coming out, especially like a lot of YouTube channels that emulate this How to Catch a Predator style, where, you know, the Chris Hansen thing, where they bait someone in order to meet up with what they think is a kid, but in reality it's the owner of the channel, and then they call the cops on the guy, right? And what shocks me about it is how many they catch. Like every single week, they have the ability, they have the content to create 2 or 3 different videos. And it's shocking. It's like, Jesus Christ, like, look how many there are. But unlike in my day, when people were told, it's like, hey, this internet, it's a dangerous place. You gotta make sure that you don't give away your private info, you don't meet people online. Like, that was the mentality, which was very healthy and normal thing to have. And it's something that I'm going to tell my kid as well when he starts using the internet. Now it's like, no, the internet is safe. It's perfectly safe. I mean, we have trust and safety, and if a company doesn't listen to it, like, we're going to ban it, right? So everything on the internet is super safe, you guys. It's super safe. So, the justification is that the government keeps you safe now by banning the companies that do not moderate. And despite the fact that the companies that do moderate seem to be safe, like Facebook, like Instagram, and many others, there's still a lot of bad people on the internet. They're still scamming, they're still allegedly money laundering and blackmailing and all that other shit still goes on. It's just that now we have the illusion of safety. So what happened in 2016? Like how did they manage to start censoring the internet? Because this is an interesting topic. I remember because I was making videos about it at the time. And I was saying, you know, like, my parents lived through communism. They lived through the inability of holding politicians accountable. So what happened then can happen again, and they are on the road of achieving this. So in 2016, I think it was the United Kingdom that spearheaded the internet censorship. And they had this case where a teenage girl got cyberbullied and her parents found her dead. And they used this case, right? Like, despite the fact that billions of people use the internet, they use this particular case and they talk about it 24/7 nonstop. And it wasn't like, let's find out who did it. Let's bring the people that did it to justice. Let's have accountability. It wasn't also, it's like, is there a mental health issue? Like, if this girl would have gotten psychiatric help earlier, could this have been prevented? Because obviously, you know, if cyberbullying is enough, then what happens when you go through a divorce or you get fired or, you know, like other trauma that people go through. Like, if you can't deal with online stuff, right, like, there may be some mental issues there that can be fixed. There may be a psychiatrist or a psychologist that could have helped her, but, like, the conversation wasn't about that at all. Instead, the conversation was, we need censorship to prevent this from happening again. Now, I don't have a list of cases. I assume that such cases of online bullying have happened despite the censorship. So now we're all getting censored. And the situation wasn't fixed. But if they don't talk about it in the press, it probably doesn't exist, right? So this is where the Trust and Safety Councils came in, basically. This is why they're called Trust and Safety Council. It's like, okay, now the internet is safe, right? Like, up until that point, the internet was dangerous. But now you have the Trust and Safety Councils, and all of a sudden, the internet is super safe, you guys. So, the Trust and Safety Councils initially started banning a couple of things to normalize the concept of censorship, which was alien for the internet at the time. I remember Reddit did it with their CEO, Ellen Pao, and people were incredibly displeased, and they were in an uproar, and they absolutely hated every second of it. And they started initially with the slurs, you know, the bridge incident with the PewDiePie, and they were like, well, why do you need to say the slurs? And people were like, okay, fine, we don't need to say the slurs, but now the censorship was normalized. And from slurs, they moved to political opinions. From political opinions, they moved to people. Alex Jones was the first one that got banned from all the platforms at the same time, making the collusion apparent for everyone. And I think this was done on purpose, so that it normalizes the idea that, yeah, no, like, all of the social media companies are working together with NGOs, with the academia, with members of the US government in order to censor online discussions. And it went to the point, and I don't even know if you guys realize just how bad it got during COVID, but as a content creator, like, I can tell you, you couldn't talk about most of the important topics. You couldn't talk about the US election unless you had the correct opinions. Before that, before the election, you couldn't talk about the Hunter Biden laptop. Like, if you talked about it on Twitter, it was treated like CP. And then you find out that someone that worked at Twitter actually said, yeah, we use the exact same algorithm that if you posted the New York Post publication talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, even in a DM, it would get censored. So like, any links to that were completely destroyed. People couldn't talk about important political issues. Facebook downranked it in the algorithm. Zuckerberg came out and he said that, yeah, they did that. They got political. So you couldn't talk about the Hunter Biden laptop. You couldn't talk about the election results afterwards. You couldn't talk about COVID. There were doctors that got banned. There were comedians. There were people making satire that got banned. You couldn't talk about almost any important topic. Even innocuous stuff like men going their own way movements, which is like, as a man, why are you getting married type of movements, right? Those got banned. And it seemed that they locked down the internet. It seemed that all of a sudden, only the official conversations get to be pressed, right? So like, if you have the Black Lives Matter protests, and they're burning down cities, and you have CNN with fiery but mostly peaceful thing, that's promoted, that's fine. You know, you have like Democrats encouraging more of that, that's fine, right? Like, none of that gets suppressed. The Trust and Safety Council finds out to be very safe. However, if you have like any other thing that's coming from the right, like I remember there were a couple of protesters against the lockdown measures of COVID, and they were sitting on the Capitol Hill, immediately they got banned. Even though it was a peaceful protest, they were just sitting on the Capitol Hill protesting, right? So that was the situation during COVID. Now something happens afterwards, right? You got TikTok, which is coming from China, and it's harvesting your information, which, to be fair, in the beginning, I was like, yeah, that's fucked up. But now I'm wondering, do I really care if the CCP is harvesting my information or Zuckerberg? Because at the end of the day, even if Zuckerberg has only the most benevolent intentions with my information, if Zuckerberg gets hacked, then my information gets leaked anyway, right? So it's like TikTok is bad because it's from China, and it's got like all these algorithms that are pushing people to do bad things, and they're harvesting your info, which is completely and totally different than what Facebook is doing, 100%, right? So we got TikTok, and they have like the ban TikTok law. All right, now it's in courts. They're judging whether or not the government has a right to do it. We'll see. But the idea is TikTok has to be banned, right? Because it's not Facebook, it's not Silicon Valley, it's not... All right. You have Rumble and you have Telegram. Telegram already got banned, right? Like, the CEO is in problem because apparently, as the thumbnail shows, if you have two cops connected with a string and there's no moderation and people can just talk whatever, I mean, there can be money laundering done, right? So if the government can't listen in, if the government doesn't have the apparatus to listen in, then it's a problem, right? So a person that invents an encryption program that companies get to use, and, you know, people that have NDA contracts, they use that encryption program. Well, if some criminals use it as well, then the creator of the encryption program has to be brought to justice, right? Like anyone that makes locks, like if you make safes for people's houses and you do not give the keys to the FBI, well, now you're in violation, right? Like anything that is designed to give people privacy is a problem, because obviously criminals will use it as well, even if like people that have legit interest to use it, like you have journalists, you have people from countries that are authoritarian, you have like other people that are using it. That should be illegal, right? Just because criminals use it and the government is incompetent to catch the criminals, I suppose.